the path that you walk as you live life, as you walk through life. And once I started making this connection, I realized how many similarities are actually on our walk of life and a walk in forest. Hello, and welcome back to another video. We're gonna go deep into the meaning of life, the depth of the journey, and walking home to ourselves. I want to start with how I came into this conversation, right? Or how this, walking home to yourself, following your own path of life, like all these things, how it came to me was I would go on these evening walks in Greece every summer. I go to Greece and I would go every evening on this walk with no phone, no nothing, just myself and God, really. Like, those walks connected me so deeply with nature, with source, with God, however you'd like to call it. And at some point, I just started realizing, like, I can even envision it right now so clearly. I saw, like, the path, like, the road ahead of me was really, like, swirly. The trees and, like, little side paths and directions you could go in. And I started realizing this really resembles the path that you walk as you live life, as you walk through life. And once I started making this connection, I realized how many similarities are actually on our walk of life and a walk in forest. So I started reflecting, right, that we have this road ahead of us and it's our path, and we may be walking that path, and then there is a little side road that looks very interesting and it looks very beautiful and enticing, and we want to go that way. And maybe we do. This is the part where curiosity comes in, right? You're curious about that little side path, so you go and do it. You go down to it. And allowing this curiosity to guide you and to lead you down maybe a side path or maybe a different path really allows you to open up to new experiences and to really broaden, your adventure and really discovering different parts of your path. One thing I also realized is that in my past, I've noticed that sometimes curiosity led me off my path, and then the little side path that looked so attractive and amazing at the beginning now looks like a dark, scary forest that I don't know how to get out of. And it takes being lost or getting lost to find your way back again. And I realized that, sometimes getting lost is okay. Sometimes following this curiosity or this, this bit of yourself that wants to be seen and explored, and you go down that path, and it may end up with you feeling lost or out of touch with yourself. But as you're, finding your way back, you are so much more steady and grounded on your actual path that you're meant to be walking than you were ever before. So what I really noticed for me was that if I hadn't steered off there, or if I hadn't taken that like a little side turn somewhere along the lines, like last year or something, I wouldn't have walked so confidently and so authentically and so with my heart wide open onto my path as I am now. What I'm trying to say is when you start seeing like these little side paths, or maybe feeling lost, or as if you went in the wrong direction, if you start seeing them from a place of love and a place of compassion and a place of, oh, this is actually bringing me closer to myself, it's also going to be so much easier to integrate the whole experience and honor the version of yourself that chose that experience. And when I say chose that experience, I mean you chose it with the resources that you had available, with what you thought was best at the time. If that is applicable, obviously, you don't choose abuse or those things of that sort, but I'm talking more about the conscious decisions of maybe going down a certain path or the conscious decisions of going into a certain relationship. But even if it's not within your control, always looking at yourself or that version of yourself with love and compassion as much as you can. Yeah, so I want to talk about one time that I felt a little lost, and I just quickly touched on it before. I remember it was in January this year, and I felt I felt a standstill. The way that I saw it was that my path was right there in front of me, but I was scared to take another step because there was a big fog and I couldn't see. I couldn't see where I was going. So I'd rather, at that time, I'd felt safer not taking the step and just staying where I was instead of venturing out into the unknown and trusting that I wouldn't fall off a cliff and die if I took another step, right? But because our nervous system does believe that we die if the second we do something scary, it's a bit more difficult to take that first step. And I realized, as I slowly started trusting more and taking small, teeny tiny little baby steps, at some point, I could just lean into not knowing and just walk forward with as best as I could. And then the fog lifted. And for me, the reason that it lifted, I felt like, was because I started trusting, because I started surrendering to whatever I'm going to venture into is something that I can navigate. It's something that I can trust myself to handle, something that I can trust myself to navigate. And once I develop that self-trust and that trust in the universe, that trust in God, that's when I could start walking. And that's when I noticed that the unknown became known and it became clear. These moments where I felt lost gave me a chance to find clarity again. And sometimes, you don't realize that in order to have clarity, you just need to sometimes feel lost. You need to sometimes be lost because it's gonna just give you this little way in of so much more clarity. I hope that makes sense. And also, I started thinking about relationships as well, right? So you have your path and you have your little environment. Maybe your path is in the forest, maybe it's in the desert, maybe it's in the city, wherever it may be, you have your path and you're walking. And then someone may come along and be like, hey, do you want to walk together? In a relationship forums, like a romantic relationship forums, a friendship forums, and you walk together and you share your journeys. And then maybe at some point, their road goes that way and your road goes this way. And that's okay. And you can just be grateful for the time that you were walking together, and, separate ways is what's being asked of you. And that's sometimes the case. Sometimes, sometimes you're walking together on the same path. Sometimes your path just happen to go next to each other, right? So there's this person's path, there's your path, and they go like this next to each other. Or maybe they merge together, right? So you really looking at it like that and being grateful for someone who's walked alongside with you when you do part ways, and maybe even when it's your own decision, right? To start paving your own path instead of sharing it with another person, to be grateful for the time you shared together, and then, be excited to venture out on your own. I was reflecting on this and I kept relating it back to my own life. I used to date casually, without any intention in particular, without intention for a relationship in specific. So just to date. And I don't do that anymore. It doesn't bring me any fulfillment. I don't enjoy that anymore. But I used to. So before, I would just walk on my path. Someone would walk next to me and I would just let them. I was just like, okay, I don't care where we're going. If you want to walk next to me, sure, we'll have fun, it will be great. And then once they or I decided to venture off again, it was no big deal. Like nothing happened. Now, if someone wants to walk next to me, I sit them down for a cup of tea. And, we sit on the side of my path, like on the side of the road, have a cup of tea, ask them, if they're right for you. Like, are you the right person to walk with me? Do we have a similar destination? Do we have, you know, are you gonna be okay with me stopping to smell the flowers like all the time? And, just looking at the compatibility there instead of just letting anyone walk with you, looking at the compatibility. And I just envisioned that as, sitting down for a cup of tea and talking and getting to know each other before you can, walk with me, because my path is so sacred. And anyone who, can walk with me or who's on that path with me is there for a reason, and because I want them to be there, and because they feel sacred too. And yeah, I just love that little little thought I had there. And just as a small reflection now, I just want to ask you, like, what does your path look like? Where were parts where you may have like ventured into the wild forest and got lost? Or maybe where have you ventured into the wild forest and then came back out of it even more even more alive? Another thing that I was also thinking about in relationship with like this whole analogy that I'm using was that, you can have, because I started thinking about parallel lives and like different quantum leaping and all these things. You'll have your path that leads home, but at the same time, you have a million different other paths that also lead home. And the one that you're walking right now may look a certain way, but it's gonna lead you home. And the one that may look very, very different will eventually also lead you home. And then, some may take a little longer. Some may be like you can take a shortcut, or sometimes a car comes along, you can hop on and get a little further, right? If you get a mentor or a guide. I feel like that's kind of how I see that happening. But yeah, there's so many directions that you can go with this analogy, but these are just the ways that I linked it to daily life and to the experience of life. I hope that you got the essence and that you enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, like if this resonates or not. And again, like an invitation, pause and reflect on your own journey. Where are you now? And maybe you can find a moment to stop and smell the flowers. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.